can be shared out to people who are not able to be here today. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to slowly admit people when they arrive. But hi, everybody. My name is Brianna Maltez, and I am the Peace Corps recruiter for Stan State. Happy Monday of International Education Week. To that end, this info session is going to be an info session about the Peace Corps, but with like a bit more of a direct focus on the education sector. So kind of that, and let's go ahead and just get started. From this slide, you can see that I am a returned Peace Corps volunteer myself. I served in Mozambique as a health volunteer though, so not an education volunteer, but I did have two education site mates, so two other volunteers who did serve in the education sector who lived technically in my town. They lived about 7 kilometers outside of sort of like the main area. So it was about an hour walk to be with them. But so I do have like peripheral experience with the education sector. And then I did do quite a few of secondary projects that did have a heavy education focus. And so we'll talk about all of that a little bit later. But as you can see, in Mozambique, they speak Portuguese. So by the time I finished my service, I was fluent in Portuguese, which is pretty exciting. And my alma mater is the University of Redlands. Go Bulldogs. So first, just right off the bat, I want to go ahead and just address the sort of big diseased elephant in the room being COVID-19. Back in March, we did evacuate all the volunteers when the pandemic was just sort of popping up because it wasn't safe for our volunteers to be out and about in the world anymore. So we did evacuate everybody back home. We have not yet resumed international operations or started sending volunteers out again because it's still, as we're all aware, still not safe to be out. I think we all hoped about by now we'd have a bit more of a handle on the pandemic than we do, but we don't, and we don't want to jump the gun and send people into countries where it's not safe for them and for them to get sick, and oh my gosh, not great. So we are definitely taking our time, doing our due diligence, reassessing, evaluating, reevaluating, figuring out what safeguards need to be implemented, what things need to be changed to support volunteers in country once it's safe for them to do so. So we are still accepting applications, but it's just kind of with the knowledge when you submit your application that the timeline for when you'll know where you're going and when you'll be departing for service is a bit elongated now because of the pandemic. So we just appreciate your understanding and your flexibility with all of that. So what is the Peace Corps? Peace Corps was founded in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy. So we've been around the block a few times. We know what we're doing. We roll the punches. We got you. You're good. Don't worry about it. And one of the things that I love about the Peace Corps is that our mission hasn't changed since 1961. Then and still today, our mission is to promote world peace and friendship by fulfilling 3 goals. And so the 3 goals, the first goal is really talking about kind of like your job, and then the other 2 goals really speak to that cross-cultural experience that I think is what makes Peace Corps as effective as it is. So the first goal is to help the people of interested countries in meeting their need for trained men and women. So that's, again, kind of like your 9 to 5. That's the work that you'll be doing every day in one of the 6 sectors, possibly education. The other 2 goals, there we go. The other 2 goals, to help promote a better understanding of Americans on the part of people served, and to help promote a better understanding of other peoples on the part of Americans, as again, kind of sharing your culture and what it is to be an American for you in all of its ethnicity and diversity and various identities that is, challenging that single story that some people might have about what it is to be an American. And so sharing yourself and who you are and your culture with your host family, your coworkers, your neighbors, your friends in your country of service. And then that third goal is bringing it back. So that's you sharing the culture that you were honored to be a part of and you called home and everything for 2 years with your family and your friends back here. So for me, that's talking nonstop about Mozambique and making my favorite dishes for my friends and family here, and introducing them to like my favorite songs and stuff like that. So those are the 3 goals, and that's the mission of the Peace Corps. In terms of why choose the Peace Corps, there are so many things to do in this life. Why would you do the Peace Corps? You could do it for any number of different reasons, and I think it is really lovely to always ask volunteers what brought them to the Peace Corps, because everyone's reason is so different. It could be that you want to fully immerse yourself in a new culture. Maybe you studied abroad and that was an amazing experience and you want to do that, but like on a larger scale, like 6 months is great, give me 2 years. I'm here for that cultural immersion. Yes. Maybe you want to challenge yourself in unexpected ways. trust me, you definitely will get that challenge in the Peace Corps. Or you want to like be someone's window into America. Again, challenging that single story of what it is to be American. For me though, it was my parents. They were both Peace Corps volunteers themselves back in the 70s, I think from 73 to 75. That's my dad on the left and my mom on the right. They were actually both education volunteers themselves. They taught biology and math respectively in Ghana as education volunteers, and that's how they met. So I kind of just always heard about the Peace Corps. I grew up hearing about their stories and the people that they met and their adventures and misadventures and all these things. So it was just something that was sort of always on my mind that I wanted to do. Um, and then when I finally got the chance to do it, I jumped at the chance. So this slide just has a couple of statistics and our only two requirements to join the Peace Corps. To be eligible to join the Peace Corps, you must be a U.S. citizen and you must be at least 18 years or older. Beyond that, everything is done online. There are various like desired skills and required skills that are specific to different posts. But the only two requirements for the Peace Corps are that you're a U.S. citizen and that you're older than 18. This slide just has a bunch of stats on here for you in case you like them. My favorite one to mention always is the volunteer age range from 20 to 86. The average age of a volunteer is about 27. And again, just kind of speaks to the fact that the majority of our volunteers are pretty straight out of college. It's kind of generally when people might feel the most free, have least like burdens financially or emotionally or whatever, when things that are tying you here to the States. So a lot of people do go straight after college. That's when I went as well. But there is no age range. There is that you have to be at least 18 years or older, but as long as you are older than 18 and physically fit to go, you can serve as late as you want. The woman who is that like end of the date range right there, 86, she served with my friend Anthony in Morocco. And when he showed me her Instagram at the time, and first of all, Homegirl had an Instagram and it was popping. And her most recent post when he showed me was a selfie of her on a camel. And I was like, this woman is amazing. She's goals for my life. I want to be 86 on a camel in Morocco doing the Peace Corps again, living my best life. Like, sign me up, do it right now. So that's my favorite stat on this page because I think it's really awesome. So in terms of where you can serve, again, kind of caveating the fact that currently we don't have any volunteers out and about in the world, but normally we do serve in over 60 different countries. You can kind of see from this map that there's kind of a wide range of places all around the world. So a little bit of something for everyone. As I mentioned, I served in Mozambique, specifically in the town of Cuamba. You can see from the map at the top, that little like red sort of provincial line thing, that's where Cuamba was. So very far north. And Cuamba, or Mozambique, is actually twice the size of California. So it's basically the entire length of the West Coast. So it's pretty large. And if you kind of think about Mozambique being the West Coast, the capital, Maputo, is down where San Diego would be. And then Cuamba, as you can tell, is kind of up where like Portland would be, like Oregon-ish kind of area. So pretty far away from the capital. Cuamba was in the province of Niassa, and Niassa itself is one of the least developed provinces in Mozambique. So where I was, and from what you can tell from these pictures, it was all dirt roads. I didn't have running water for my whole 2 years, so I didn't have to carry my water in a bucket on my head the whole time that I lived there, which also meant that I didn't have a shower, so I had bucket baths for days, had to wash my clothes by hand and all that fun stuff. I did have electricity. It was pretty spotty. You pretty much were always guaranteed that on Sunday it would be out for some reason. And then throughout the week, it kind of fluctuated. So I just always made sure that I had candles on deck and my solar battery was like charged and stuff if I needed to charge things. But my favorite thing about Cuamba, and you can tell from these pictures, are these mountains. And the four corners of this slide, it's the same mountain range. They're called the Matuque Mountains. And as you can see, these pictures are taken from different spots in town, like all of them. But no matter what, you could always see the mountains. And there's such like an iconic skyline that's burned and imprinted into my mind that just reminds me of Cuamba. And just makes me feel very nostalgic and happy whenever I see it. So a little bit about my town. And now let's kind of talk a little bit about what you can do. So again, kind of covered why you might do it, being like the mission and stuff like that. We talked about the where you could go, and now let's talk about the what you'll be doing, your job. So Peace Corps has 6 different sectors that volunteers can work in at the grassroots level in communities all around the world, wherever they're serving. So the 6 sectors are agriculture, environment, youth and development, health, education, and community economic development. A little blurb about each of those before we kind of zero in on education. Agriculture and environment are very similar, but a little bit different. Agriculture is more sort of hands-on, working with the local farmer on their farm, doing innovative farming techniques, addressing food scarcity, talking about how to stagger the crops you plant to not completely deplete your soil's nutrients and stuff like that. Environment is more environmental education, talking about sustainability, climate change, forming eco clubs on schools in your town, working at like a higher level with organizations, trying to implement various sort of action plans and stuff like that. So they both agriculture and environment do address and kind of tackle the problem of climate change in the world, but in sort of different ways and on different scales. Youth and development is working with the kiddos. So you'll be partnered with an organization that's sort of the equivalent of like a Boys and Girls Club or YMCA, but in your country of service. And you'll be doing kind of after school programming, creating social and emotional learning curriculum. You'll be doing anything from coaching a soccer team to teaching Zumba to forming like health clubs on campus. So lots of different stuff, but all very much so focused on the youth. Community economic development is our business sector. So you'll be partnered with a local organization or even like a local person, helping them get their business up and running. So you'll be helping them create a business plan, you'll be teaching them how to create a budget and stick to it. You'll be helping them teaching them how to do grant writing, things like that. So kind of all the stuff that it takes that you need to know to take having a dream or running your own business, go from just a dream to actually being a reality. Health, as I mentioned, I was a health volunteer. And when we say health, we definitely do mean health education. It's not going to be, you're not going to be delivering babies or giving vaccines or anything like that. You'll be definitely doing like public health outreach, community health education. And the public health sector is a very large and far-reaching umbrella. So you can be doing anything, working on any initiatives from nutrition to maternal child health to water and sanitation, hygiene. Specifically for me, I was a malaria and HIV/AIDS youth educator. So I was partnered with 2 very small community-based organizations that work with people with HIV and AIDS and orphans and vulnerable children in my town in Columbus. So for me, it basically meant that on the daily, I would go out and give health talks, lots and lots of health talks about the symptoms, prevention, and treatment of HIV and malaria, and then also a lot of stigma fighting specifically for HIV, and then a lot of myth busting for both HIV and malaria, like how do you actually catch it? How do you actually pass it on? All that stuff. And then education. Education is one of our largest sectors, actually. About 40% of our positions are in the education sector. And as an education volunteer, you'll be a teacher. So you'll be teaching math, one of the sciences, TESOL, or TEFL. There we go. Kind of like on this slide as listed right here. So TESOL, TEFL, so that's English as a second language, math, one of the sciences. You could also be doing literacy promotion, or you could actually be doing teacher training. The first 4, I would say, are the most common education positions. The last one, teacher training, are usually reserved for people who have either like a bachelor's degree specifically in education, so they have a bit more experience, or people who are actually, they were teachers themselves, and so they're now teachers, like training people how to be teachers as well. So the 2 volunteers who were my site mates I mentioned earlier, their names were Sam and Caitlin. And Sam and Caitlin were both teacher trainers themselves. They both had previous experience teaching abroad, so therefore they were qualified to be teacher trainers in Mozambique. So lots of different things, but for them, they're specifically teaching people how to teach English. So they were at the teacher training college in my town. So why would you do the education sector? There are so many different reasons, right? I mean, like, why would you do the Peace Corps? Yes, but why would you specifically do education? It could be that you want to teach future leaders. Maybe you realize the importance of English. Maybe you studied abroad and you're like, wow, yeah, a definite need, this is a thing that I didn't realize. Maybe you want to help with integration and access. Maybe you want to be that person, somebody's like venue, not venue, avenue, there we go, avenue to accessing further education. Maybe you also just like you want to develop your skills. You have a life plan and Peace Corps fits neatly in that in terms of gaining experience teaching abroad, teaching internationally, getting those cross-cultural skills, practicing a language, becoming fluent in a language. There's so many various skills that you get by being a teacher abroad, and specifically being a teacher abroad with the Peace Corps. Or if you want to be a student again, I feel like every teacher is also a student themselves. And that's even more so true in the Peace Corps, because you are learning so much about the culture that you are in. You are learning about your students. You're learning about the best way to teach in your town, but also in your country of service, because what works here with teaching might not work there with teaching. So lots of different stuff. So one thing that I didn't mention, but so we covered like primary projects and stuff, but now let's talk about secondary projects. And secondary projects are really how you bring your own passions and interests and hobbies and stuff into your Peace Corps. They're what make your Peace Corps kind of your own, your experience your own. So for me, a couple of my secondary projects did, as I mentioned, have quite a huge education focus, even though I was a health volunteer myself. So this is a picture from an EGRA program that I led, which was Portuguese, basically, a Portuguese acronym for a literacy program, helping kids learn how to read in Portuguese and working on that with them. So the two guys standing on either side of me, they were my counterparts for this project. And every Sunday I would bike out, so my bike kind of lying there on the back behind the tree. I'd bike out and I had a bunch of books, and I have a backpack with all these books. And then I also had those two banners up there. And I would go out to one of the communities, one of the more rural communities in my town. And the kids kind of knew that I would be there. And they would come and I would read them stories. We'd practice the alphabet, and we'd all break up into groups kind of based on age. And the three of us would each take a group and work with them on their literacy, work with them on reading, on pronouncing words, on just like the alphabet, sometimes even on writing. So lots of different stuff. And I had so much fun doing this project. And it was just an opportunity that was presented to any volunteer that wanted to. It didn't matter if you were an education volunteer or a health volunteer. And so when the opportunity came up, I was like, this sounds like such an amazing experience, and a really cool program to bring to my town. And if I can help facilitate that, that would be fantastic. And what's awesome is that because I was trained on that, and then I had two counterparts, I was able to train those two guys on how to continue the project. So again, kind of students that desire for sustainability and making sure your projects are sustainable and will carry on after you've gone. So they were actually trained to continue the project, the EGRA facilitators themselves, once I'd left. So I left all my books to them, I left them my banners, and everything, so they could continue the Sunday story times with the kids in my town, and possibly like bring it to other neighborhoods and stuff. I also had an English theater group. English theater was one of my favorite projects that I ever did. EGRA was really, really awesome, but English theater was like my heart project. Like I loved it so much. So I'd heard about this project, English theater, when I was in training at the very beginning of my Peace Corps service. And basically what would happen is there was a theme released every year, and these groups of secondary school kids would write a skit, like a short 10 to 15 minute long play about this theme. And then you as a Peace Corps volunteer would help them translate that script into English, and then help them practice it, rehearse it, perform it, and compete in these provincial competitions all around the country. So I heard about this, that this was even a thing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I so want to do this. I so want to have an English theater group. Like this sounds like so much fun. Yes. So I got to my town, I got to Toowoomba, but like being that I wasn't an education volunteer myself, I was like, I'm not sure how I'm gonna find kids to or secondary school students to be in this group with me. I was like, So I'm like trying to figure out how to advertise that I want to start this project. But like I didn't, as it turned out, I didn't have to, because about a week and a half, 2 weeks into my first time being in Toowoomba, this group of kids, all the kids on the left-hand picture, all in the red shirts, they came running into my yard, And they started speaking like rapid fire Portuguese at me. And I was like, oh my God, slow down, slow down. Like, huh? What? And so basically I finally understood that they were the previous Peace Corps volunteers at English theater group. And they were like, we're so excited that you're here. We like really want to compete in the competition this year, but we need the Peace Corps volunteer. So can you help us? Like, can you help us with the translation and with the working our pronunciation and all of that fun stuff? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. I was like, this is amazing. This is just like such a wonderful thing, very serendipitous thing that's happening right now. And in my head, I'm thinking about like rehearsal schedules and various like theater games that I want to do with them, and like studies and skills and experiences that I want to teach them and stuff like that. And I'm like, when's the competition? And they were like, 3 weeks. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I had to quickly throw out all those plans, best laid plans of mice and men, right? Kind of threw out all those plans and then was just like, cool, let's go. I was like, I'll clear your guys' schedules. I'll clear mine after school. When you guys are done, after work, when I'm done, we'll meet up at the secondary school and we'll rehearse every day leading up to this competition. And so we did. The first year that the theme was knowledge is power. The second year the theme was today is learners, tomorrow's leaders. So the kids, they wrote the script, I helped them translate it, we worked on their pronunciation, and then we went to the provincial capital where the competition was that year, and they competed. They competed against, I think, 5 other groups that year, which was also just like really fun because I mean, for myself, I'd never left Kuwamba because I'd just gotten there. But so many of them had also never left Kuwamba because the opportunity to travel, even within the province, had never really presented itself. Like so many of the people that I worked with, so many of the kids that I met were born and raised in Kuwamba, like many generations back. Um, so for all of us, it was such a fun adventure that we got to do together. And it really became such great friends because all of us were like going to Lashunga, going to the provincial capital for the first time. And we were all like kind of like, whoa, starstruck, in terms of just how big it was and everything like that. But we competed, and at the end of the competition, there are awards. It's kind of like the Oscars, and so there was like best actor, best actress, best English speaker, and then of course best overall, best skit, best play, and we won first. I was so proud of them. It was amazing. It's crazy. All that hard work so paid off. And then also, one of the girls, Beth, she won the award for best English speaker. And in that picture in the red shirt, she's like kind of peeking her head over my shoulder. So that's Beth. And she like that award completely went to her head, and she was just like, I'm the best English speaker that ever was in the world, forever and always. Amen. And I was like, no, but we can get you there. And so she and I, like, winning that award, like really like lit this fire inside of her to like really want to like double down and like work on her English. And I was more than happy to help her do that. So we actually ended up kind of continuing our sort of like one-on-one sort of tutoring sessions. She would come over before school, like after we both like done our various like morning chores of like carrying water and sweeping the yard and making breakfast and stuff. She would stop by my house on her way to school, and I would make us tea. We'd sit on my porch, and we'd just chat and drink our tea, and we'd just talk in English and stuff. And so it could be anything from, we would sometimes translate lyrics that she had heard from Portuguese into English or vice versa. We would just sometimes like have a topic and we just talk about it and stuff like that. And slowly like her English got like better and better and better. And I was so proud. And so then at the end of that first year, my first year, she had already like, she graduated from secondary school, and she actually applied and gotten into the teacher training college in my town where those 2 other Peace Corps volunteers worked, because she wanted to be an English teacher. So my second year, when we did the English theater program, she was actually she was my co-facilitator in terms of leading the group, and which was really helpful because actually my second year I was the provincial coordinator for the whole English theater program for my entire province. So I was really busy helping other volunteers figure out, like, get them resources for their groups, help them figure out the logistics for the competition, where it was going to be held, getting like the money and stuff to send volunteers, bring them and their teams to the competition site and everything. So I was really busy doing all of that. So it was awesome that she and I could kind of tag team and kind of split up the rehearsal times and stuff because it was like really helpful for her being able to, she's like, I was in the competition last year, I won, now I'm doing this. And so I think also it was very empowering for her being able to do that and like lead kind of her peers in this and be the person that they came to with questions about English. And also was like solid practice for her in terms of, since she wanted to be a teacher herself. So yeah, so then our second year we competed. Instead of having 5 groups that year, I was able to get 8. So we competed against 8 groups, which was really, really cool. Which meant we had even more kids. There were like 90 kids at this competition, and it was like a weekend long thing. It just kind of felt like a camp. It was just really beautiful and joyous weekend, and it went really, really well. And so then by the end of my Peace Corps service, I actually like talked to my country director to be able to get permission to stay in country a little bit longer past when I was technically supposed to COS or finish my service, specifically so that I could see her graduate. I could go to her graduation, and I did, and I saw her graduate officially with her certificate to teach English in Mozambique. And I'm so, so proud of her. And so she's still doing that. She and I still talk over Facebook Messenger pretty often. Her English is really good. My Portuguese is so bad now. But it's just, I think her and her story is one of my favorite stories and things and experiences that I had in my Peace Corps life. And it wasn't even my primary project. Like my primary project was health, but I had this amazing one-on-one connection with Beth. And I like to think that I helped her in some way on her path to where she is now. So that's kind of why I like to say that education, it doesn't have to be like the education sector. You can do like even if you're not an education volunteer, you can still have secondary projects in education. But kind of going back to primary projects, just really, really quickly, as I mentioned, since everything that I just talked about was just kind of what I did after work and on the weekends and stuff. But my primary project, I was working with, as I said, 2 very small organizations, Hankoni and Dolaka. And so these are just some of the pictures of the people that I worked with, my coworkers, my friends. And what I love about this slide that I didn't realize until I was putting together this slide was that top left picture, where I'm in like the orange tank top, that picture was taken on my very first day meeting them. So my very first day at work, and as you can see, like I'm kind of like on the outside of the group. I just met all these women. My Portuguese isn't like the best yet. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing. It's my first day. So there's a lot of feelings going on. And then the picture in the bottom right is my last day. All these people have become my friends, my family, my various TAs and TOs, and my support network. They're my friends. And so honestly, like some of the strongest women that I've ever met, like, oh my gosh. And they had actually thrown me on that day and the day of that picture, they'd thrown me a surprise going away party. And so we had we cooked a big feast and danced a lot. And it was just such a beautiful moment. But in that picture, like I'm in the middle, like these people are like, I feel held by these people. These people are my friends, and I know I'm gonna miss them, and I still do, like, so much. And so that picture just has so many, like, both of those pictures I feel like encapsulate perfectly how I was feeling in that moment of just like, and then like, wow, I'm gonna miss these people so much. And then that top right picture is was our typical like uniform kind of, since as community health workers, we got these baby blue hats and these hot pink shirts that we wore whenever we would go out and about and do our health talk. So people kind of knew if they saw a baby blue hat or a hot pink shirt that they could come and talk to us about whatever health thing that they needed to talk about. And then if we didn't know the answer, we knew someone we could refer them to, or we could go to the hospital with them or whatever. And then the brightly colored fabric that's tied around our waist, that kind of fabric is called capulana in Mozambique. And that like kind of blue-green capulana was what we chose for to wear for the parade for World AIDS Day. So that's actually that day. That's why we're all wearing that capulana, is because it was taken on World AIDS Day my first year, and we were all dressed up, ready to go and walk in the parade in my town. So it was really a really fun day. But yeah, so these are just some pictures from my service of my primary project as well. So that was a whole lot. Now let's talk a lot about, now let's kind of dive into more like sort of specifics, nitty gritty things that you need to know. So what do you get during service? So Peace Corps is a fully funded program, which means that it doesn't cost you anything to do the Peace Corps. Peace Corps will pay for your ticket to country and back from country at the beginning and end of your service. They'll pay for all your living expenses while you're there as well, which includes they'll pay for your housing, so rent, utilities. Don't even worry about that for 2 years. Peace Corps got you. They also give you a living stipend every month, which is about the equivalent of a teacher's salary in your country of service. So it's more than enough to live on, food, travel, things like that. You also have full medical and dental coverage while you are there, provided to you by the Peace Corps. You are also potentially able to defer your student loans or even cancel them. Talk to your loan providers. Do not take my word for that as law. Everyone's student loans are different, but I was definitely able to defer my student loans for my whole 2 years while I was there, which was really lovely and really nice. You also accrue 2 days of vacation time per month. So just like a normal job, better than a normal job in some cases. And you can do whatever you want with that vacation time. It's quite a bit because it comes out to about 48 days for the whole 2 years, or 24 days per year. Plus you have the weekend, so it's a lot. So you can do whatever you want with it. I know I had a lot of friends who came home halfway through their service because homesickness is a valid thing to feel. First person, I would definitely like say that that's real. It's a thing. So yeah, I had friends who came home for the holidays, kind of got a hug from mom, ate their favorite food, took a hot shower, and then went back to their country of service. In this case, went back to Mozambique. For me, I was like, sorry, fam, y'all are gonna be here when I get back, and I have no idea when I'm going to be back in this part of the world. So I used all of my vacation time to travel. So instead of coming home for the holidays, for example, my first year, I went on a safari through the Serengeti in Tanzania, and it was amazing. I didn't get to see my dad that year, but I definitely saw elephants and lions. So like, sorry, dad, but it was a solid trade-off. But I was also very fortunate in that my brother and my dad, on 2 separate occasions, were able to come out and visit me. So my dad came once, and then my brother came once, and that was, I mean, amazing. And of course, obviously, I'm biased because that's what I chose to do with my vacation time. But I think that's like the coolest way to use your vacation time, more so than coming home, because you get to share your life, this like very important, unique part of your life and who you are in this time. And you're living in a new culture and calling a new place home. You're able to share all of that with your family or your friends or whoever comes out to visit you. And so now it's really nice because my dad and my brother are like the only two people who are still like very constantly in my life and stuff. Like obviously I have my friends who serve in Peace Corps with me, my Mozambican friends who are still there, obviously, that I talk to. But my dad and my brother, um, they knew me then. They knew Kuamba, they met my friends, they ate my foods, like or the foods that I loved while I was there. Like they know, they get it on some level. And so it's, and they knew me then. They knew me when I like spoke Portuguese every day, when I lived my life every single day in Portuguese, which is just like, now I think back on it and I'm just like, dang, I was very, very proud of myself. um, but it's a really beautiful thing. Anyway, you also have career skills and training. So the reason why Peace Corps is 27 months, so 2 years and 3 months, and not just a flat, easy to remember 2 years, is because for the first 3 months of your service, you're actually going to be in training. So you'll be living with a host family in your country of service, taking classes every day with the rest of your cohort on cross-cultural skills, language skills, technical skills, and health and safety. So during that time, I remember like I was learning so much. My brain felt like mush every day. I went to bed very exhausted. And you also bond quite a bit with the rest of your cohort. So all the other Americans who went abroad with you, who are going to be there for the same amount of time that you are, who are all also, in my case, health volunteers themselves. And so we all got really close. This is my group. We were Mos 22, or Mozambique 22, the 22nd cohort to be in Mozambique. And this was actually, this picture was taken at our close of service conference. So this is actually after 3 months before we will all finish our services, after we'd all been in Mozambique, living, working, being volunteers for 2 years. So this was at the end of our time together. and we're all posing like how we saw our students and the kids that we work with pose all the time. So these are very typical teen Mo's poses. But it was but yeah, so that's what the training period is. So Peace Corps definitely make sure that you are very well trained up before they send you out. So that's why it's not like necessarily a requirement that you are like an what's the word, an expert in the sector that you've been placed in. For example, for me, I was a double major in art and theater, not anything really involved with health. But I did have health experience, volunteer experience in the health sector here in the States. I had had 3 years of that. So I imagine like that, plus the fact that I met the language requirement, being that I'd taken Spanish for all of high school and also a year in college, that health experience plus me needing the language experience qualified me to serve in the health sector. But so because I didn't have any previous like super intense knowledge about malaria and HIV, all those technical skill training classes during those first 3 months were super important for me to learn what I was going to be teaching. And then also, of course, picking up Portuguese was just a whole thing. And for that, I think the host families come in so clutch because they've been working, like many of these host families have hosted volunteers previously. They've been working with the Peace Corps for a while now, so they kind of are used to sort of American idiosyncrasies and challenges that the volunteers might face when they first get to country. And one of my host sisters, Idenia, honestly, she provided the best incentive ever for me to learn, to like buckle down and really like learn my Portuguese, being that she was having relationship trauma and she wanted someone to talk to about it. And I wanted to hear it. So she would come home, I remember, and she'd knock on my door. She'd be like, oh, Mana Brianna. I'd be like, oh my God, what did he do today? And she'd come into my room. We'd like sit on my bed. We'd tuck my mosquito net in around us so that we're protected from mosquitoes. And I'd have my dictionary on one side and my vocabulary list and verb sheets on the other side. And I'd be like, okay, go. And then she'd tell me about whatever thing had happened. She'd spill all the tea. And I would follow along. Like I was start slowly able to follow along pretty well because I was so invested in learning about this and hearing her story that I really buckled down and studied a lot so I could be there for her. But so host families are amazing. At the end of your first 3 months, after you finish the training period, there's this big swearing in ceremony. You go down to the ambassador's house or the U.S. embassy, and you take the official Peace Corps oath. Your host family's there. You're there, obviously. The ambassador's there. It's like a graduation ceremony. They cry. Your host family cries. You cry. It's a beautiful thing. And then you all kind of this cohort, this family that you created in your first 3 months, you all kind of get flung like seeds to the wind, and you go off to wherever you're going to be living for the next 2 years, your official site. And so for me, that was Kuamba. In terms of kind of just addressing safety and health, because it is a very important thing, especially in a pandemic, we do have medical officers, Peace Corps medical officers, they're called PCMOs, available 24/7. They are trained doctors and nurses whose sole job is to care for Peace Corps volunteers. So they are available all the time to help you with whatever you need help with. And if they are not able to, or if they, or rather not if they are not able to, but if you have something that is bigger than what they're able to handle, it needs to be sent to like a more developed, potentially country or hospital. They can always medevac you for anything. So if you like break your arm or anything like that. Your security officers are part of our safety and health team. The safety and security officers, the SSOs, their sole job is to monitor the safety and security of your country of service. They will be the ones that are kind of keeping tabs on any sort of natural disasters that may be coming towards you, keeping tabs on the political climate that's going on in your country of service, pandemics and things like that. They're also the ones that vet every single site and every single house that a Peace Corps volunteer lives in. So there's like this long checklist of things that your house has to have and things that need to be checked off for a home to be deemed safe for a volunteer to live in. So they are the ones that are in charge of doing that. So every site, every home is vetted by them. Also, our staff, just in general, our in-country Peace Corps staff, are all such amazing people. I mean, I can only speak about Mozambique, but I don't doubt this is the case everywhere. The Mozambique Peace Corps staff was, I mean, they're accomplished, trained, educated, like people like and from Mozambique for us, and like the first resource for you in terms of questions that you have about your site, questions you have about like cross-cultural things, just advice that they can give you. They're amazing. You also, as I mentioned, the community immersion training program, that's that first 3 months that we just talked about. You also have full US government support and dedicated victim advocacy should anything happen to you. In terms of benefits after service, what do you get post your Peace Corps service once you've officially finished your full 27 months? You will every volunteer receive something called a readjustment allowance. It goes up a little bit every year, which is pretty cool. Currently, it's at about $10,000 that you do get, and you can do whatever you want with that $10,000. It's really no strings attached, just a small monetary thank you for your service. Good luck readjusting. So if you want to put it towards like grad school or paying off loans, like education, you can definitely do that. If you want to put it towards just readjusting, moving, getting a car, putting like a down payment on an apartment or something like that. Or you take and say, you know what, I'm not ready to go back to the States yet. There are some interesting things going on. And I'm not ready to go home. You can take it and you can say, I'm going to travel and see how far I can get on $10,000, which is can get pretty fun. You also have NCE status for a year, which stands for non-competitive eligibility and refers to government and federal positions. So basically, if you want to work for the Peace Corps or the National Parks Department or the EPA or Department of Education, anything like that, your NCE status actually allows you to apply as like an internal hire. So your application will get put on the top of the stack, right below veterans, but above everybody else that's applying, all the rest of the general public. So it's a pretty awesome hiring advantage that a lot of return Peace Corps volunteers are able to leverage to get a job pretty quickly post Peace Corps. You also do have there is a public service loan forgiveness program, which possibly your loans might be eligible for. So possibly you could get some of them forgiven, which is great. Again, just talk to your loan providers. And we do make sure that you do have access to affordable health insurance when you do get back, since you won't have any yet. And my favorite benefit to talk about is the Paul D. Coverdell Fellows Program, which is a mouthful of a name. So we're just going to call it the Fellows Program for the Fellows. And basically, it's a partnership between Peace Corps and like 200 universities all around the states, wherein they have agreed to subsidize or pay for a portion of tuition for their master's programs, specifically for return Peace Corps volunteers. What? So the minimum that our partner schools are required to cover is 25% of tuition. The maximum that some of them cover is 100%. So potentially you can go get your master's for free post Peace Corps, which I don't know about you, but again, if I can avoid getting more student loans and still get a master's, I am so on board with this. So that's why it's my favorite benefit to kind of talk about. And you do have lifetime eligibility for this, which is pretty cool. Unlike with your NCE status, we only have that for 1 year, so it's kind of a use or lose it within that first year. The Coverdell Fellows Program, you're eligible for the rest of your life. So you could come back, kind of take your time readjusting, then go and get your master's for free with the Coverdell program, the Fellows Program, have a career, have a midlife crisis like you do, go back and get another master's also for free, even though it's been 30 years since you did the Peace Corps. That's all something you can do with the Fellows Program. So really awesome hiring, a really awesome benefit that all volunteers do get once they finish service. So now let's talk a little bit about the application and what that looks like. So there are 2 ways to apply, and as I said, we are still currently accepting applications, even though we are not currently sending anybody out. And that's just, again, because once we are able to, we're going to need volunteers. And we're going to want to, I imagine we're going to want to start kind of get that ball rolling pretty fast. So if you apply now, even though you might not hear back very soon, you do get your application kind of in that pipeline at the top of the stack. Kind of, you'll be one of the earlier resumes and applications that our placement officers review. So there are 2 ways to apply, generally and specifically. The general application is that kind of button up there on the top of the slide that says apply now, serve where you're needed most. And that's you saying that you're down to go anywhere in the world and do anything in any of the sectors. So it's the most flexible option for sure. The specific application allows you to choose a specific region and a specific sector. So as you can kind of see from the positions listed below that apply now button, there's the business advising volunteer in Africa, health extension volunteer in Central America and Mexico. So you can apply specifically to that, and You still won't get to choose your specific country of service, but you'll know at least kind of what you'll be doing and what region of the world you'll be in. So it still gives you more choice than the completely general application does. So you can always use the little filter buttons on the right over there to filter by what sector you're interested in, or you can always filter by region as well if you wanted to. So 2 ways to apply as of right. In terms of what the application process kind of looks like, so you'll browse, which is again kind of what we were talking about, figure out which way you want to apply, and then you'll apply. The application is all done online on our website at peacecorps.gov and mainly consists of 3 things: your motivation statement, your resume, and your references. Your motivation statement is just a short 500-word essay about why you want to join the Peace Corps, what's your motivation, how do you plan on overcoming any challenges that you might face, things like that. Your resume is a little bit different than a normal resume because for the Peace Corps, your resume is actually allowed to be up to 3 pages long. It does not need to be 3 pages long, but it is allowed to be 3 pages long because we want to know so much about you. Peace Corps is really about reviewing you in totality, the sum of who you are. So not just your education and work experience, but also languages you speak, volunteer experience that you have, cross-cultural experiences that you've had, have you studied abroad, things like that. So because we want to know all of that information, it is allowed to be up to 3 pages long. And then the third thing is your references, or all your references. So these are not letters of recommendation. This is just the contact information for 3 references. Peace Corps will contact them later on in this application process and send them sort of like a questionnaire basically to fill out about you. So just the name, number, email address of your 3 references. And that's mainly what the application consists of. The rest of it is sort of just typical standard application stuff, checking boxes, filling in personal information, stuff like that. So actually, if you sat down and did it all in one go and had sort of those 3 pieces already done, and just ready to upload, the application actually only takes about 45 minutes, so it's very short. What takes a lot of time is just perfecting and reviewing and editing your motivation statement and your resume, and definitely take the time to do so. The most competitive applicants definitely have a tailored resume, and that's just kind of goes for any job you should apply that you apply to. You should definitely always tailor your resume, and especially for the Peace Corps. Once you apply and hit submit, the next thing you'll want to do, you'll be sent is your health history form. That will be sent back to you, I think within 24 to 48 hours, and you have 30 days to fill that out. But I always tell people that I work with that I want you to get in 3 days because it's not a hard form. It's not, the health history form is not when you need to rush to get like a doctor's appointment or anything like that. Your health history form is just where you would self-identify any pre-existing conditions that you have. So do you have asthma? Are you diabetic? Anything like that. And that's just important information for our placement officers to know so they know where to consider you for that can actually support your medical needs. So it's very important that you get that form back as soon as possible because your application is actually not even considered live until you send back in your health history form. After you send in your application, before they receive your health history form, it's just kind of sitting in application purgatory. So you want to make sure that you get that in as soon as you can, so that our placement officers can move you on to the next step and start considering you for positions and countries. After all of that, once you sent your health history form back, once you're officially being considered, you will be asked to interview. Interviews happen all over Skype. They did even before the world went completely virtual because of the pandemic. So we're all very well versed now in the kind of like do's and don'ts, Zoom etiquette and everything like that. So just do all of that. You guys know the drill. Quiet place, solid, stable internet connection, professional on the top, pajamas on the bottom, whatever you want. But it is a professional interview just happening from the safety and comfort of your own home. After your interview, you will be sent your invitation to serve. Woo! Very, very exciting. And yeah, you'll accept your invitation or you will decline your invitation. If you accept your invitation, the next thing is the big medical and legal clearance slog. It's annoying, it's long. All of us have been through it before. You can do it too. And so this is when you want to call up your doctor, make an appointment to get all the blood work done, vaccinations done, physicals, all of that, just get medically cleared. And this is also when you get like fingerprinted and background checked to be legally cleared as well. After all of that, once you've been cleared on both those fronts, then just is the last sort of onboarding trainings, a couple of online trainings will happen. And after that, the last thing that you have to do is throw yourself an amazing farewell party, and pack your bags and get on a plane and start your Peace Corps adventure. So very, very exciting. Um, and estamos juntos. That's just how we would always end every single meeting that we ever had in Mozambique. We would say estamos juntos, which means we are together. So we are together. And these are just a couple of other pictures from my service. The top left picture is were my neighbors and my best friends and all of the kids that they had, and so who I saw every day and saw grow up for 2 years. They're some of my favorite people in the world. And on the bottom, those 4 pictures in a row, my neighbor Vivi, who's in the picture, kind of she's like smiling, kind of in the blue shirt, on the right of that picture. Vivi had a baby while I was there, and she actually named her Brianna after me. And she asked me if I would be her madrina, which means godmother. So I'm floored and still to this day so honored that she would ask me to do that. And of course I accepted. And so those 4 bottom pictures are just me with baby Brianna. I, as her godmother and as just Vivi's friend, I helped, just like all the other tias and friends and everybody and family members in Mozambique, of Vivi's family. I took my turns carrying Brianna around on my back around town. I helped feed her and change her and everything like that, because I was her neighbor and her godmother. I helped throw her very first birthday party, which is that 3rd picture there on the bottom. And then that last picture over on the far right of Vivi and Brianna, that was my last, like right before I left. So after she was about a year and a half old at that point, and she'd just gotten so big, she had hair, it was a whole thing. And now she's like 5, which is crazy. So, but she's the best little human in the world. And then the top picture, top right picture, is me and my, I know I keep saying that everyone's my favorite, but they all are, but she's like my favorite person. She was my sort of adopted host mom. She just kind of adopted me as like her host daughter, basically, even though I didn't have a host family, she was my person. Her name was Donna Rokia, and we would have every Thursday we would have lunch together. So I'd like bike over to her house after work, because in Mozambique, basically from 12 until 2 in the afternoon, everyone goes home. There's kind of like a siesta sort of period, where you're supposed to go home and have lunch with your family. And so she was my family. And so every Thursday I would have lunch with her. I'd like stop by the market and pick up whatever it was that we needed for whatever thing we were going to be cooking together. And she just had amazing stories and just this like amazing light inside of her, and she was fantastic. And when my dad came out to visit me, I of course introduced him to her. I brought him to her house so that she could have her matapa, because she made the best matapa that I've ever had. And I remember a very like beautiful moment where she kind of like took my dad's hand and she's like, I don't want you to worry, I'm taking care of our daughter. And he was like, thank you so much. So it was really, really lovely. And then that last picture up there on the top, I had cats. I had a cat when I was in Peace Corps. Her name was Mila. She was there with me through so many things. And Mila had a baby named Oliver, as well. So that's Mila and Oliver that I hanging out on my bed underneath my mosquito net one day. So in terms of just like kind of last final things, before I'm gonna like open it up to any questions from you guys can go ahead and take yourselves off mute or just drop them in the chat. But I do recommend that you follow us on social media. We have a couple of poppin' social media accounts. My favorite one personally is Instagram. The Go Peace Corps Instagram account is really fun, has application tips and tricks, testimonials and videos and things from volunteers, lots of fun stuff. And then lastly, here is my contact information. So as I said, I'm the Peace Corps recruiter for Stan State. Normally, I used to go to campus a couple of times per semester. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, but I am still here and always willing to hop on Zoom or have a phone call with you, or just exchange emails and answer any questions that you have. So go ahead and screenshot this or take a picture with your phone or write it down, but this is my contact information. And I'm sure Brittany will send it out to you as well. And I will also follow up with everybody on this call after this event. So that's me. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now. And just kind of open up the floor to any questions that you guys might have. Again, feel free to either just drop them in the chat or take yourselves off of mute, whatever you want to do. But we have a bit of time, so just want to like open up the floor. And if there aren't any questions, that's perfectly okay. I'm just going to assume that I did a really great job of answering all of your questions in my presentation.
Hi, Brianna. I do have a question.
Awesome.
What would be the reason that your application might be denied?
Great question. There's a whole bunch of different reasons. I mean, it could be that you weren't medically cleared. It could be that you weren't legally cleared. It could be that you applied specifically for a position that you just were not qualified for at the time. I know that like the competitivity question is one that I get asked very often, and it's also one that's probably the hardest to answer just because there are so many sectors and so many countries that we operate in, and some sectors and countries are more popular than others. So for example, when you could apply specifically to a country, so many people, like I've reviewed so many resumes and applications and stuff for people who wanted to serve in Costa Rica, Thailand, and Fiji because they're Costa Rica, Thailand, and Fiji, and I get it. But so like those countries, for example, are just going to be, they were just generally speaking more competitive to get into than others. Similarly, there are also some sectors that are a bit more competitive. For example, so many people want to be youth development volunteers because who doesn't like working with kids? But as a result, that youth development is just generally speaking one of our smallest sectors. And then when you add that to being this one of our smallest sectors to the fact that it gets so many applications, it therefore translates to a more competitive position. So I think it's really working with your recruiter with me to really tailor your resume really well, make sure it's like a solid resume, really taking a lot of time to like answer the question of your motivation statement and do that. And then also just kind of like figure out where you want to apply, like which way you should apply. If you should apply generally, if you should apply specifically, if you should gain more experience before applying. Like I'm always happy to review a resume for anyone on this call and kind of figure out what sector you'd actually be most competitive for. But I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Great question though. Are there any other questions?
I have one.
Cool.
Have they changed the rules on taking pets with you?
No, unfortunately they have not. I think actually we had probably, I mean, before the pandemic, obviously, but I think we actually had our very first volunteer go abroad with their service animal, which would be the only exception is if your pet was also like your service animal. It's just I know because so many people ask me this question and I get it, like especially having a cat now, I'm like, I don't want to leave her for 2 years. Like, what am I gonna do? But there's like, if you think about the fact that you're going through culture shock, your animal is also going through culture shock. Because I know in Mozambique, dogs and cats are treated way differently there than they are treated here. So that's kind of just also like weighing that and like wanting to like make sure your animals also transition well. So we have not changed it yet, but hopefully one day in the future, that would be nice.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Cool. Well, if there are no other questions, you guys have my information. I'll go ahead and drop it in the chat as well, just so you guys have my email address. Yep, there you go. Feel free to copy, save that, what have you. I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording now.